Siesta Sand Live. Siesta Sand Live is broadcast from Captain Kurt's Village. It's Siesta Key's home to great food, great drinks, great music, and great times. Look for the giant American.
Welcome to Siesta Sand Live. I'm your host, Natalie Gutwein, and today I have an incredible show for you. Another Hoosier native, Clay Robinson, one of the owners of Sun King Brewery, is on. I am so excited. Can't tell you how excited I am to have that Hoosier connection here to Siesta Key. Don't know if you know, but they've got a Siesta Key beer. So stay tuned. Can't wait to hear what he has to say.
The next segment is brought to you by the Judy Berger team, part of Sotheby's International Realty. Whether a buyer or a seller, you'll be delighted with their service. And by Altez Vacations. It's the perfect place to go to find that perfect place to rent.
Welcome to Siesta Sand Live. I am here with Clay Robinson. So I've done a lot of podcasts, and I was so excited about this one. I have been texting everybody. I've been telling my family. We have a very, very serious Indiana to Sarasota connection. So Clay is the owner of Sun King Brewery, and they were started in Indianapolis. I remember the whole thing. It was such a big deal. And then I'm sitting down here one day, and my nephew comes into town. We go to the beach, and he gets this Siesta Beach Light, and it's a Sun King beer. And I'm like, that's it. Got to get him on the podcast. So welcome, Clay.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me, how did Sun King get started? I want to go all the way back. I want the whole story.
Well, I guess we were talking earlier, and you left Indiana in 2009. So we actually started Sun King in Indianapolis in 2009. So I started my professional brewing career 26 years ago at a brewery in downtown Indianapolis called Rock Bottom Brewery.
I remember that.
Restaurant and brewery. In college, I worked in restaurants, and I had no idea what I was going to do with my life, so I continued working in restaurants after college.
And you went to Wabash.
And I did go to Wabash College.
I will not hold that against him. I'm from Greencastle, where DePaul University is. Every Hoosier is going to know what we're talking about.
An age-old
Nobody else
rivalry.
will have a clue. But yeah, huge rivalry, and my family are all DePaul grads.
We're older now, and we can put it behind us. So be civil for this.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. So I was kind of a hippie in my 20s, and I had long hair and a beard, and I was looking for a job, and a friend of mine said, hey, you should go work at Rock Bottom because my friend Brian works there. He's got long hair and a beard, so clearly they hire hippies. So I went. I got a job there. I was waiting tables, and you went through beer training, and there was a guy who was probably 5 years older than I was that was the brewer, and he told me all about how beer was made. I'd loved beer. Probably for too long as a youth and through college. And in college, I had a friend who homebrewed and worked at a brew pub in Lafayette. And so he would bring these interesting beers, and I worked at an English pub, and I would try these different beers after work. And so I knew that beer was a very broad thing that wasn't just fizzy yellow liquid. I was interested in it, and then when I started at Rock Bottom, my first week of training, I realized that there was a guy who was a lot like me who made beer for a living, and it honestly blew my mind.
Sounded like your dream job.
I was like, wait a second, like this guy's not that different than me. So I worked days, he worked days, his name was Tom, and basically at the end of our shifts at Rock Bottom, you got a shift beer. So every day at the end of work, I would grab a beer, and I'd sit at the bar. He'd usually be wrapping up and having a beer. So I just started asking him questions about how you make beer, how he got into it, all these different things. And so we would talk pretty regularly. And about 3 months in, we were having a beer at the end of the day, and he looked at me and he goes, hey, have you ever thought about making beer for a living? And I said, honestly, Tom, I didn't know that it was a job that somebody like me could have until I met you. And he goes, well, I've been watching you. You've got great hustle. You've got a really good work ethic. You've got a good head on your shoulders. You ask great questions, and I think you would make a great brewer. And I said, so, wait, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, that's okay. We would train you. I'm like, so you're telling me that you'll teach me how to make beer, you'll pay me to do it, and if it works out, I'll never have to wait on another table again as long as I live. And he's like, actually, yeah. And you also get to drink beer. And then he smiled and sipped his beer. He goes, it's delicious.
Yeah, that does sound like the perfect job.
And I was like, okay. So he was actually leaving, but he introduced me to the person who was coming in after him who needed an assistant. And Bill was an Indiana native who'd moved to Colorado, ended up brewing, took the job in Indianapolis because he wanted a career opportunity. And so Bill and I got along great, and I did an old school apprenticeship. He said, show up on Monday at 6 a.m. and we'll get started. And so I started working, learning how to brew beer, cleaning, scrubbing, all of the processes. I read every book I could get my hands on, and books, magazines, talked with Bill. I pretty much started living it and breathing it, and I worked at Rock Bottom for a little over 4 years. Bill left a year later. I took over the brewery, and I left after 4 or so years because I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. There were some corporate culture changes. That company actually sold to private equity.
Oh, that always changes
And
things.
there was a big, my father ran companies as an entrepreneur, and I was, in my formative years, he ran a company that got sold to a private equity group, and then eventually later a bigger conglomerate, and I'd seen what it did to company cultures. So the writing was on the wall, and I was like, okay, this is not going the way that I want to go. So I left. I took what was going to be 6 months off. It turned up being 3 years. At 27, I cashed in my 401k. I took 3 years. I worked part-time construction, and I traveled the country, sleeping on couches, reading books, and visiting friends and family, and chasing rock and roll music. And I woke up at 30, and I was broke, in debt, and still had no idea what I was going to do with my life. And my friend Dave Colt, who is my co-founder at the brewery, called one day and needed somebody who knew how to operate a brewery. Actually called for a friend's number. That friend was already in another gig, and I said, hey, I know how to operate a brewery. And he's like, I thought you were done. And I was like, I was, but I'm broke and I need a job. And so I went in and I started working with Dave, and in December of 2005, and at the end of our first week together, we started a conversation that was, what would you do if you could open your own brewery? And that conversation lasted a couple of years, and it was all, what was the best job you had? What was the worst job that you had? What drives you crazy about this, that, and the other thing? How would we want to treat employees, give back to the community? It was all very broad, ethereal, value-based questions about what type of organization you would want to run. Never, honestly, a conversation about we'll make a beer and we'll call it Sunlight. It was really, because we knew how to make beer, we really wanted to talk about what we would desire and respect if we could be our own bosses. And after a couple years, we both started getting approached by people with money. And as the son of an entrepreneur, I realized very quickly that if I took other people's money to start their idea, they were like, we want to start a brewery, but
then
we
they
need a
own
brewer.
that idea.
Yep, and they were like, we need a brewer. And I'm like, well, what's in it for me? And they're like, well, we'd give you sweat equity, and by the time it's all done, you might own 5% of your company. I'm like, well, that sounds like a horrible deal. So Dave and I were talking, and I was like, look, people want us to start breweries because they have money and think it sounds cool. They don't know anything about owning a brewery, and at the end of the day, 5 years from now, we could end up doing something that we love for somebody that we may but not disagree or may not agree with. And
and they own it.
Yep, and we'll be in the same situation we are. They own it, and we're out, or we're dissatisfied. I was like, why wouldn't two guys who know how to make beer and run a brewery come up with our plan, the plan we've been hatching for the last 2 years?
Wait, what did you say your degree is from Wabash?
My degree is in rhetoric.
Rhetoric, yes. So I'm assuming that it was 2 years of discussions there. With beer, I can picture this.
Yeah, we'd discuss it over beers. We'd discuss it while working. It was just kind of this long running, I'm capable
And
generally.
that's when beer was getting really, really popular.
It was very much kind of a growing thing.
Especially in Indiana.
yeah.
There are a lot of breweries in Indiana. I love beer.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
Absolutely love it. I remember going to the beer tastings in Bloomington, which at IU. That was a party.
I probably served you at those.
Why
actually. I
they
used to do
thought
those
that
with
was a
Rock
great
Bottom.
idea
Yep.
that was some of my favorite nights, but I love those.
It was a great idea because you get younger people who are in college excited about drinking things other than what they might be drinking.
Oh yeah,
cheap
we were,
during the week.
and that was in the 90s.
Yep.
We had just started and getting away from kind of the Bud and Bud Lights and that and the taste.
Yeah.
So okay, back
All
to
right.
the story.
So basically, at that point, we started trying to plan a business. We spent another year or so By the end of kind of a year, we were working with some other folks, a restaurant manager, because all we knew were brew pubs, and because that's all Indiana had at the time. And we had a restaurant manager in operations and a chef we were working with. After a year, we couldn't come up with a corporate structure, what type we wanted. We couldn't agree on a name. We couldn't agree on a location. We couldn't agree on anything, and I was getting really frustrated. So I just looked at Dave one day after a meeting, and I was like, I don't want to run a brew pub. Like, why don't we just want to make beer? Like, can we just make beer? And he's like, I don't know, would that work? And I was like, I've been plenty of other places in the country where there are breweries that just make beer. And I was doing all of the spreadsheets and numbers at the time. I was like, let me go home tonight. I'll take all the restaurant stuff out and I'll run just the beer numbers because that's really the thing we know best. And I came back the next day and I said, okay, it's different, but you cut out the kitchen staff, you cut out the host, you cut out
a lot of your costs.
You cut out a ton of your costs and your overhead. Your location doesn't have to be as prime because you can be out of the way in some industrial space, all of these things. And I said, and then when I look at the online reviews for the place that we're working at, like beer is like the third thing in the mention because they'll be like, well, I waited too long for a table and then my server was having a bad day and they messed up my burger, but my beer was really delicious. And I'm like, we're kind of an afterthought in this brew pub thing. So,
which is the opposite of what you were going for.
Totally. So I'm like, let's just make beer. And so at that point in time, then we looked around Indianapolis and realized, well, wait, no one in Indianapolis runs just a brewery.
No.
And there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of bars and restaurants that would want to serve local beer, but nobody's making local beer to serve it. You have to go to a brew pub to do it. And at that point, it was kind of like the brakes came off the train and we were full steam ahead. So.
That explains how you got where you're at.
Yes.
So I left in '09, but my sister was still there with my niece and nephew. So I, like almost once a month at least, I kept coming back. And we started going to Sun King.
Nice.
So even though I wasn't there, it was a huge, huge deal. We were all so excited. That was always a big thing. We would go downtown, go to the Sun King Brewery. The kids could be there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, so it was really, and that was the thing, like, we had both been brewing beer professionally for over a decade by that point in time and doing those same beer fests that you were attending while you were in college and literally training people's palates and introducing them to craft beer. So when we opened Sun King, and we're 6 blocks off of downtown Indianapolis where the Circle is, and there's a lot of Hoosier overlap here, so a lot of people know what I'm talking about, but we're right downtown. It's a big warehouse. It's open and industrial. It was different than anybody else had done before. And when we opened up, it was kind of an explosion. People were like, oh my God, what is this? And we were in, at first we were in 5 restaurants, and then we were in 10, and then we were in 50, and then we were in 100, and it just kept growing from there. And actually, our 5-year goal was to make 5,000 barrels of beer by year 5. And our first year, we made 500 barrels of beer in 2009, which was in 6 months. And in 2010, we made 5,000 barrels worth of beer. We put the business plan in a drawer as a piece of nostalgia, and then we tried to figure out how to keep up with consistent growth over the next
it just shot like a rocket. Everybody loved the flavor. Like I said, Indy is a beer town. We like our beer up there.
Well, that's the Midwest. I mean, unlike here where there's a lot to do, there's not a lot to do other than hang out, eat food, drink beer, and watch sports.
I try to think, what did I do on the weekends? Because here, you're outside, you're at the pool, you're at the beach, you're on the water. Like, what did I do on the weekends? I don't even remember.
Yeah. I think that's what draws a lot of Midwesterners to this area is the lifestyle and the ability to be outside and all of the wonderful things. I mean, I'm raising children here, and it's like, wow, there's something to do all of the time.
All day, every day.
Yep.
Yeah, it's more we have to... when the days that it rains, that's when I'm kind of reminded of what it was like to raise kids in Indiana.
I have to tell you that it rained the other day when it rained. I love rainy days because they're so few and far between.
I say the same thing.
It's like a reason to breathe and be like,
appreciate them now.
I don't have to do all of the things. I might not leave the house today.
Oh, I know. I did that day that it rained. I was like, oh, this is so beautiful. I love the sound. Because when it's not every day, it's an anomaly. It's like, oh, this is cool. I can handle this.
Yeah.
And then by that afternoon, that was actually my birthday.
Oh,
and
happy birthday.
so rain. Thank you. Rained and rained and rained, and then the sun came out.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm in paradise.
Yeah, very much
I love this.
Huh?
So you're in Indy. And then, are you in other states other than Florida? I know distribution laws are kind of
They are. Every state has different laws. Since Prohibition, alcohol is a very weird, regulated industry, and there are a lot of laws to jump through. I've got some great attorneys that help us navigate all of those things. We, in like the 2015 area, 2015-16, we sold beer in Indiana, only Indiana up until about then. 2016-17, we started to sell beer in Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, states that bordered Indiana. And then, let's see, 8 years ago, we hired a gentleman named Joe Burns. Joe Burns is our Florida sales manager. At the time, he was our overall sales manager. But Joe came to us. He's an IU grad.
Nice.
At IU, his first job in beer was at Upland Brewing Company, which is an early Indiana brewery that started. So he worked at Upland right out of college. He left Indiana and moved to Sarasota, Bradenton area.
Oh, really?
And took a job with J.J. Taylor and worked for J.J. Taylor Distributing for a decade plus. Maybe 15 years, and during that time, one of their fastest growing little breweries was a brewery called Cigar City. And so Joe worked with and saw the Cigar City growth going on, and he actually left J.J. Taylor to go over to Cigar City to be their sales manager during their period of kind of meteoric rise in the craft movement in the Florida beer world. And Cigar City in 2017 sold to a larger corporate conglomerate that has since been resold a couple of times and now is owned by Monster Energy Drink.
Oh, wow.
So, but Joe, similar to me, we'd gotten along. We met at different beer tastings and became friends, and had the Indiana connection, of course. And when Cigar City sold, Joe came to me at an event we were at, and he said, "Hey, Cigar City just sold, and they're gonna have me sell beer throughout the Southeast, and I'm gonna have to sell a bunch of different brands. And Cigar City was a small company that I loved, and I don't want to work for a big conglomerate. I want to work for another like family-owned small business. And would you have any potential for me?" And I looked at him and I said, "As luck would have it, Joe, my sales manager quit 2 weeks ago and has 2 weeks left. So we're just about to launch the job search." So we hired him. And so he kind of was working back and forth as he started. He and his wife agreed. They moved up to Indiana, and they spent one winter in Indiana and really decided that
nope, can't do this anymore.
Yeah, totally. It was like, hey, and so we had this conversation. He's like, "Look, my wife and I want to move back to Florida. This just isn't what and where we
once you've dipped your toe in this water, there is no going back."
So, and I totally get it now because I've been here for 3 years and I haven't been cold in the winter, and I'm like, why would I ever go back there and do that? I try to not go back in the middle of winter to visit for any reasons.
See, Macy, my daughter, that's what I tell her all the time. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll see you in March.
Right. Or you can come
maybe
see
April.
me. Mom lives in the sunshine.
So we had this conversation with Joe, my partner Dave, and I, and he was telling us what their plans were, and it's like, "Are you quitting?" He goes, "I don't want to quit." And it's like, and we basically were like, "Well, you're a great employee. You're great at your job. You don't live in Illinois, Ohio, or Kentucky, and we sell beer there. You manage chain relationships and all these things, and so you're not in the office that much because you're out on the road. So it doesn't really matter where you live. So yeah, move back to Florida. But if you're going to move to Florida, we should sell beer in Florida because we're Sun King, and it's the Sunshine State. And we'd come down for Cigar City's Hunapoo Day, and we'd sent like one-off distributions, and the beer always sold really well. So we're like, hey." So he moved back down here 7 years ago, and we started selling beer, and it went really, really well. He was our rep. He'd run around, talk to bars and restaurants, and, the number one question he would get is, "Oh, where's Sun King?" And the answer would be Indianapolis, and then the look would be puzzlement, and it'd be like, "Oh, wow, I thought you were a local brewery." And so we would have this conversation, and then in 2020, when the world changed,
yes, it did.
he was down here. We actually went from selling beer in 5 states all the way back to just Indiana, because local beer was kind of the only thing that was selling in any of the other markets, and most beer was bars and restaurants. Even with shorter closures in Florida, when bars and restaurants shut down, we went from a brewery that sold 30,000 barrels of beer, which is 60,000 kegs of beer a year. About 60% of that was draft beer, and 40% of it was cans. Literally overnight, we went to 99% cans. And stopped kegging all of our beer. We kegged some because we were able to open our tap rooms in our places and sell to-go beer out of them. But we went to all cans.
I didn't even think about the effects.
That. It was massive.
COVID. Wow. Because we were down here and the world didn't change for very long.
Being up there, you kind of see it all going on. And so Joe actually was like, "Well, we're dead in the water down here. All of our stuff at the time was just bars and restaurants. We didn't sell beer in many liquor stores, and we weren't in Publix. There was none of it. So it's like, I don't have anything to do down here, and I'm going to come up to Indiana because I want to be a part of, I don't know what's going on, but I want to be a part of the team that is helping steer the ship and make sure that we make it through this. And we're like, well, that is very kind of you. So he stayed in a friend's walkout basement in Bloomington, Indiana. And
that's Hoosiers.
Yep,
we
totally.
do what you got to do, whatever it takes.
It's that Hoosier work ethic we were
That
talking about.
is.
So he stayed in a friend's walkout basement. His wife stayed down here, and he came up in March of 2020, and he stayed in Indiana till the end of the year. And
wow.
We didn't have anything for salespeople to do, so we furloughed a handful of people. But our sales team, because salespeople are very important to a business, they all worked on our canning line. So our like 4-person sales team worked on the canning line, and they just like.
Oh, that is
helped.
Hoosier ethic,
Yep.
work ethic, if it ever was.
And so over that period, fortunately, we worked in a brewery, and we would still have beers at the end of the day, and we had a tight-knit community, and we would talking about how we steer the business and where we go, and through the whole thing, we were talking about how business had been steadily growing in Florida, and what we were going to do in Florida when we got back. Also, during that period of time, shipping costs nearly doubled, and we'd send a half a truckload a month, and down here, and it's like, man, if we're gonna go back to Florida, we either need to get out of Florida completely,
right,
or if
go
we're
big
gonna
or
go
go
back,
home.
we gotta go big. And if we're gonna do it, we need a brewery in Florida. We need to be local to Florida. We need to actually set up and start a real operation. And in looking for growth, we started looking at the demographics, the numbers around it. And it's like, well, Indiana has 6 million people. Florida has 20 million people. Florida has 80 million visitors a year, 350 days of sunshine, a lot more disposable income. If the sun's up and a place is open, people are drinking during the day. That's not part of the
no
Hoosier
matter
work
what
ethic
time of day it is. Yeah.
So if it's a rainy day, they're under the tiki hut here at Captain Kurt's drinking beer and booze and hanging out. So it just is and the lifestyle that we talked about, like all of those things, we kind of looked at it and we're like, oh my God, like this is a huge opportunity for us. But so let's do it. And so when Joe came back in January 2021, we said, hey, take a look around if there's an opportunity. It's been tough on people. There are places closing. Let's see if there's a tap room, a brewery, something. And he sent us a couple opportunities because he was traveling around the state. All of them were an hour or two away from Sarasota, and we're sitting up there like, the only person we know in Florida is you, and you're in Sarasota, so we can't open anything 2 hours from Sarasota. And then he called and said that he heard that J-Dub's Brewery up on 12th Street was filing for bankruptcy. And I said, get me in touch with them. I need to talk. And so I got in touch, and I came down and I checked the place out, and they had pretty much turned the key and walked away in March of 2020. So it was a bit of a mess. But it was like, okay. And so they filed for bankruptcy, and I sat with the lawyer, and I worked through the whole process, and it was 9 months of this might be working, this might not. In the meantime, my wife is pregnant with our second child. And so actually at the beginning of 2022, so this is 21, she wasn't pregnant yet. So 21, we're working through it. She got pregnant in the fall. At the very last week of 2021, we got a call and said, congratulations, you won the auction for the bankruptcy. And I was like, okay. And I looked at my partner, and I'm like, we just bought a brewery in Florida. And we're both like, how do you run a brewery in Florida? I'm like, I don't know. We'll just figure it out. So my wife's pregnant with our second child. I rent a condo on Siesta Key in February of 2022 to bring my wife down. She is from Alaska. She's never been to Florida in her entire life, but she does love the ocean and the beach, because who doesn't? And so we came down in February. Spent a month. We drove down. I went to the brewery every day and started tearing out everything, like moldy drywall, all of the stuff that needed to be redone. We pretty much rebuilt the entire space. It took 6 months to get the tap room open and another year to get the brewery rebuilt and redone. It was a very long process. Like all projects these days, it went behind schedule and over budget.
Oh, right.
Yeah, lovely. But anyway, after that month, my wife Starry looked at me and she goes, can we move here? And I was like, oh, yeah, can we? Absolutely, honey. I was going to need to have this conversation with you. But now that it's your idea and you've brought this to my attention, I would love to move here. And my partner and I had already been having the conversation, like, how do you run a business that's 1,000 miles away? For us, we are very authentic. Like, this is what we do. We love it. My partner and I started the business. We still run the day-to-day 16 years later. And we're involved in so many aspects of it. And it was one of those things like, if we're going to open a brewery in Florida, somebody who owns the brewery needs to live in Florida, be a part of the community. I would never be on this podcast. I would never
Right,
have
yeah.
had the opportunity to have such a presence at Captain Kurt's if I didn't live down the street and didn't frequent places and visit and meet people
Right.
and talk. So the authenticity of being a member of a community when you're operating a business in general, but a brewery particularly, which is a
Right.
very social
Beer,
endeavor.
yeah, that is it's
Yeah.
a very local thing.
Yeah, so my wife had our son in August of 2022, and in November, right after Thanksgiving or right around Thanksgiving, we moved down here, and the landlord for my building became a friend over the period of time, and he allowed us to stay in his condo while we looked for houses to make us not have to rush, and that gave us the time to find the right place, and we bought a beautiful little house over in Gulfgate and moved in. Now I've been here for 3 years, and it's fantastic. It's like every day is paradise.
Oh, there's no going back.
No, not at all.
No. Yeah, once you get down here,
Yeah.
it is just amazing.
We used to talk a lot about later in life when our kids get a little older, moving back to my wife's hometown in Alaska so that they could be near their cousins and all of
Yeah.
that. And it was this beautiful idea that we had. But since we moved here, that beautiful idea seems crazier and crazier every day. Because we literally talked to her mom 3 weeks ago. We were on the beach on a Sunday. She called her mom and she's like, "It's snowing." We're like, "We're on the beach and it's 85 degrees."
Right, and it's January, February.
Yeah,
What-
it
yeah,
was
it's-
April at the time. Like, oh my God. So, yeah.
Yeah, once you get used to this, you wake up every day and the sun is out or it's coming out, or you do have a little bit of a cloud and you're like, oh yay, okay,
It's
we're
pretty
good.
magical.
Yeah,
I feel very fortunate.
And you're still selling beer.
Yeah,
and you just
absolutely.
still
Yeah.
great flavors. You've got the new Siesta Beach Light. I was so excited when I saw that. I love the packaging.
Thank you.
I love the lifeguard stands. Do you have somebody that designs all that?
Yeah, we have. I've got a 2-person art team that actually functions out of Indianapolis, but a lot of our corporate headquarters are still there. So I've got a team that does sales and runs our tap room, and we've got a great team of people here in Florida. But the people who are up there, I've got a full-time graphic designer, and he does nothing but make pretty pictures.
That explains
design,
it because
packaging.
Yeah. That's one of the things I always noticed about Sun King was the designs that you have. They're all different. They're all individual and constantly changing and evolving. And I love that.
If you're out there and you're not familiar, our website's sunkingbrewing.com. We've got a list of all of our beers, or you can just do an image search. But I mean, we have at this point we probably got 7 or 8 beers that we make year round, but we also make 2 to 3 new beers every single month. Some of them are only in tap rooms. Some of them make their way into packages and draft out in the marketplace.
Yeah.
But we do new art for everything. And so, actually, when we were kind of, again, living here and, we've got beers that have become very popular, and orange vanilla cream ale is one of our
I
most
love that
popular
one.
beers. Tastes like an orange dreamsicle. So it's a great Florida beer. It was our #1 seller out of the gate. Pachanga, which is our Mexican lager, is another big seller, and then Keller Haze, our hazy IPA. Those are our top 3 beers. In 4 months since the launch of Siesta Beach Light, it's gone to #1.
Oh, wow.
And it's
So
one
is
of the,
that going to stick around?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's
Okay.
one of those things we were talking about it, and all of those beers I mentioned are really great, but at the end of the day, the #1 selling beer in America is a light lager, and and we're in a beautiful hot place, and it's what people drink the most of in general. And so we were talking about what beer we could make that would really make an impact here, and we had just launched a light lager in Indianapolis that was doing really well under the Indianapolis Brewing Company moniker, and it was doing well. And we're like, man, we should do something like that down here. And I was talking to Joe, and he's like, we could name it after Siesta Beach. And we started
we
looking.
love it.
We started looking, and we're like, wait a second, no one has named a beer
No,
Siesta
I'm telling you, when I
Beach
saw it, when my
anything.
nephew bought that, I was like, oh,
Yep.
I love this.
Yeah, and then just talking about it, and we were like, okay, well, and what are the iconic things? So we designed it to be genuinely Florida, and to really to have that heart to it. But as much of anything, we wanted it to be something like people who come and visit, like they're gonna pick up a 6-pack at Publix or stop by the tasting room, or you can grab it to go at Captain Kurt's or Siesta Market, Morton's. All of these places have it, and you've got this opportunity to take a piece of your vacation home.
Oh, it's the lifeguard
Yeah, uh-huh,
stands.
yeah.
It is as iconic Siesta Key as you could get. I'm working on that Siesta Key Alliance, and we're branding Siesta Key, and that was one of the things I talked about with the engineering company, and it was let's look at some of the iconic features of Siesta Key. And the lifeguard stands is one of the things I told him to look at.
Yep.
Because that is so Siesta Key.
When we were looking at Florida as an opportunity and talking to Joe and really looking at some of the other opportunities, we were really narrowed in on Sarasota. And one of the things that Joe said to us is like, Sarasota is an international destination. Like,
right.
you know, if there was an opportunity in Bradenton, and we talked about it, and it's like, well, if we took that and we said, where are you at? Where's your brewery in Florida? We'd say Bradenton. Most people would say, where's Bradenton? And you go north of Sarasota. No offense to the people of
Siesta Key.
no offense to the people of Bradenton, but it's just one of those things. And like Siesta Key, consistently voted number one
in the
beach
country,
in the country.
number 4 in the world now.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so like if you like, no matter where I travel, somebody's like, where do you live? I just say Sarasota and they go, oh, it's beautiful there. I don't have to say Florida. There's nothing about it. It's iconic on its own. And then again, for us as a local brewery looking to grow market share and entrench ourselves with the community, the fact that we could make a beer called Siesta Beach Light and put it out there and have something that is truly iconic to the area. And
it's very. So how do your the Florida sales, how do they compare to the Indiana sales? Are we catching up at all?
It is growing consistently. We've got a great distribution partner in Gold Coast Eagle here in Sarasota, Bradenton, and then we've got a number of other distributors outside of. Sarasota, Bradenton is our home market. We are consistently, over the past 3 years, we're up over 60% year over year in Florida itself.
Wow.
Throughout season, and especially with Siesta Beach Light, we're up like 80% this year in our home market. So sales, they continue to grow. I mean, we're starting from a smaller number. So Indiana is probably still 90% of our sales. We do sell in Illinois and Ohio. That might be another 4 or 5% between the two. We're probably only 5%, but the goal is just to continue to take that and grow. I mean, we're Hoosiers. We got the work ethic.
Right.
We're down here, or at least our roots, and we're down here and we're grinding every day. Joe's out in the market. We got a great Justin's another one of our guys here who's out in the market, and then we've got a rep up in Jacksonville, which is kind of our next best market out of here. And then we're spread out, but we just kind of started doing a lot more stuff down in Naples, and you know, a lot of it is just being here, being out, creating the relationships, doing podcasts, telling the story, having people, you know, if there's a bar that you go to regularly and they don't carry Sun King, ask them to carry it.
Oh, absolutely.
That's how we grew in Indianapolis. It's how we grow here. And, you know, once people see Siesta Beach Light, it's been a really easy, and they're like, we need to have that. I mean, it's up and down all over the place. It's kicking off at Gilligan's.
Oh, yeah. So Thomas Banning, he's a DePaul grad.
Okay.
He lives with me. He was my nephew's best friend. Grew up in Indiana, grew up going to Sun King Brewery. And he works at Gilligan's.
Okay.
And as soon as that came in, he's like, oh, I've been selling this like crazy. He's like, I tell everybody, you got to try the Sun King. And he's like, everybody loves it. As soon as they try it, they're hooked.
Yep, I appreciate it. I mean, we work really hard to make great beer. We're trying to make great partnerships. We've had a partnership at Siesta Key Beach for a long time now. It was one of our first partnerships down here. Having our beers on the beach was something that, like, to me, was like, we finally made it.
And people don't all know that there is a restaurant on the beach on Siesta Key, and you can, and they serve alcohol and good food.
Yep. Yeah. They've really, I think they've done a great job of elevating the concessions and things there. And then, like, you work your way out, and we're in a ton of places all over the Key. But then, you know, I would be remiss. We're here at Captain Kurt's right now. These guys, Brett and Brad, have become good friends and great partners to us. We actually we make 3 brands of beer for them. So they carry Siesta Beach Light.
Oh, I did not realize you brew their beers.
We brew Krabby Red for them. We brew Tiki Haze for them, and then they also have a New Mexican style lager that's coming out this summer. So we also, along with that, have created a partnership. So we make 3 beers for Captain Kurt's that they have under Captain Kurt's brand.
Oh, I think we need a beer tasting.
So
there we go. Maybe we could do a beer tasting podcast.
We could do that. I'd say it's too early, but we're in Florida.
It's Florida. Like we talked earlier, if the door is open, somebody is going to buy alcohol here in Florida.
Absolutely.
Well, why don't we take a short break and come back, and I want to talk about your employees and sort of the culture at
awesome.
Sun King.
Thank you so much. Great.
The following segment is brought to you by Beach Bazaar, located in the heart of Siesta Village. Everything for the beach, and we do mean everything. And by FAM Development, the area's best in custom-built homes. Start living your dream on and around Siesta Key.
So I'm back with Clay. So I want to talk a little bit about the culture at Sun King Brewery? Because I read about that. You've done a lot of things to recycling and the employees. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, like we talked about early on, the culture was a big point that we discussed as we were talking about how we wanted to run a business. So, a lot of what we do is born out of the things that the people we'd worked for before didn't do. So, in general, we really try to empower our employees to make decisions and to do their best at any given job. So, I've done every single job at Sun King, but at this date, I've so far removed from so many of those jobs that we really like to let people have input. And, if we always say, there's no bad ideas. I mean, there's ideas that may not work, but even out of what might be a bad idea, there might be some grain in it.
A light bulb that goes.
Yeah, totally.
How many employees do you have?
So we have 60 full-time employees and 100 plus part-time employees.
Oh.
So a lot of our tap rooms, we have part-time employees. So, from the very beginning, I mean, I like to call it a get in where you fit in strategy.
Yeah.
And I always say that I don't care whether you're black, white, blue, green, your hair's purple, you have tattoos or piercings.
Hippies.
Totally, yeah. You can have long hair and a beard and still work for us. We hire hippies. But at the end of the day, if you're willing to show up, have a great attitude and a good work ethic, then we're willing to have you. So we have a pretty eclectic workforce. Younger people all the way up to people in their 60s. And that's across the board from our production staff to our leadership team to our part-time team. Tap room wise, at all of our tap rooms, which we have 7 now.
Yeah, where are your tap rooms?
So the majority are in Indiana. The original Indianapolis brewery, there's a suburb, again, there's a lot of Hoosiers that listen. So Carmel, Indiana, which is a affluent suburb.
I lived there for a little while, a couple years.
To the northwest. Fishers, Indiana, another affluent suburb to the northeast of Indianapolis. We have a small tap room in Kokomo, which is about an hour north of Indianapolis. We have another in Mishawaka, which is right outside South Bend, where Notre Dame is located. We have a tap room in the Indianapolis airport. Yeah, so when you fly in on the B concourse, if you fly Southwest or American, you get picked up and dropped off right by the Sun King tap room at the airport. That was one of the things.
Good place for one.
Yeah, we really wanted to plant our flag there as like, hey, you came to this area. I mean, it is, I'm just going to go ahead. I like to put things into the universe. It is my goal to have something in the Sarasota airport. I know they're redoing concessions right now.
They are, yeah.
So
they're in the process
probably
of that.
not going to happen right away, but maybe the next time they redo it or when there's an opportunity, I'd love to have something there. So when you fly into Sarasota, which is our new home, and it's my home, and to have that kind of presence. So, but taproom-wise, I mean, we've got people who are in medical school. We've got people who are nurses. We've got people, we used to have a grief counselor that worked downtown. A lot of things, people, engineers, just random stuff. We've had some professors at local colleges work at our tap rooms.
Who doesn't want to work with beer?
Yeah, and it's, I mean, if you've got a good head on your shoulders, a good work ethic, we're happy to have you.
Well, in your tap room here.
Yeah,
too,
in our tap room
Sarasota.
here. Totally. So most of our staff, we've got a couple full-time people at our tap room in Sarasota, a brewer and a manager, and then outside of that, we also have a number of part-time employees. We've got one Deemer, who's great, works the most hours, and she just really gets it and loves Sun King and has been a part of it since the beginning. And then most of the rest of our staff work 1 day a week, and they're either servers or we've got a couple moms.
Do you give them free beer, or is that why they stick around?
You get a discount on beer. So once you're an employee at Sun
Work
King,
1 day a week, get a discount.
Yeah,
that is a great
50% off all of your beer. You do get a shift beer at the end of every shift. So, I still go back to that, those earlier days at Rock Bottom, and actually the first pub I worked at, when you're done, if you've worked an honest day's work, you deserve to have a beer.
Well, and that's how they learn the product.
Yeah.
And they appreciate it.
And we want people who are into beer. So, we try to treat our employees well. I have a hiring philosophy that I like to hire people who are smart and passionate about what they do, and then I like to get the hell out of their way and let them do their jobs. So
that's a great idea.
Yeah, and then outside of that, we do try to focus and give back. We do a lot of donations to silent auctions with gift bags.
I've always heard you've been a great corporate partner.
Yeah, thank you. And try to work with various organizations. It's been we do a lot in Indiana because it's been our home for
Right.
16 years. Being down here, we work with the Chamber pretty regularly, and we've worked with a number of other organizations. We're right down the street from the Humane Society, so we've done some stuff with the Humane Society because we love dogs. We've done
Right.
some Cat Depot things. We'll host different groups in the tap room, and so we try to use our spaces and then just work our way out. And, as myself or other members of our staff find something that they're passionate about, whether it's in Indiana or Florida, the idea or the ability to say, hey, I love this thing and we've got an event going on. Is there something we can do to support? And then we always just try to support those things.
Oh,
So
that's
yeah.
great. So the tap room here, do you do, is it food trucks outside?
Yeah, so the tap room's at 12th and Mango. It's right by Ed Smith Stadium, which makes spring training our best month or so of the year.
Right.
Actually, that Ed Smith Stadium is kind of a really underutilized asset in Sarasota. I'd love to see more things there, selfishly, because it benefits my business when there's traffic there, whether it's concerts or sporting events. The tap room is right there. The tap room is small. It seats about 50 inside. We've got a nice little patio out front and another patio out back, so 100 or so people total. We do food trucks. We have a great partnership with a guy named Dan, and he has, it's Dan Appease a Man. He's the food truck with the wood-fired pizza at the Sarasota Farmers Market every Saturday, if you've ever had his pizza.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I mean, it's honestly some of the best pizza I've ever had.
Beer and pizza. Great combo.
He's there Tuesday through Friday. We do music bingo on Tuesday, and we have trivia on Wednesday. Thursday we do kind of rotating craft events. We've had terrarium events. We do a pretty regular a bonsai tree event, and then Fridays are just Friday, and people come for pizza and beer. And then on Saturdays, we rotate through food trucks.
Are you doing live music at all?
We do. We just started doing live music this year, so
great.
We've actually kind of cross-referenced with our friend Kim, who owns the Bazaar, some of the acts that artists that she uses, and the Captain Kurtz folks have some. So we've got some great local artists that come and play. So we do music 2 or 3 days a week. It kind of rotates around, usually on Saturday, and then one other night during the week. So.
Do you have any beers right now that are seasonal or anything like that?
I mean, the tap room has 14 taps, so there's always various things rotating. We do a beer that's exclusive to Sarasota called Lollipop Style, and it is a sour ale. It's
that sounds.
It's
now
really
you're talking
nice.
my language.
When I say
love
it's
a
not
sour.
like super tart, it's just refreshingly sour, and then we rotate out the fruits. So we just put out a watermelon version. I think actually we had watermelon. I think strawberry just came out.
Why don't we go over there after this?
So we rotate through fruits on Lollipop Style, and then we always have different new IPAs, because IPAs are kind of a huge thing for the beer world. It's
right.
The biggest selling portion of craft beer are IPAs, and people who drink IPAs want to drink different ones all the time.
Right.
So we've got Keller Haze all the time, and then we'll make different new IPAs.
Where did the name come from on that?
Sun King or
Keller Haze?
Keller Haze. Hazy IPAs are something that came up in the last 5 or 6 years, became popular. And so a hazy IPA is unfiltered. And Keller is actually an old German word. A Keller beer comes straight off of the tank, unfiltered. So when we decided to do an IPA, Keller, if you're a beer nerd, means a beer straight off the tank that is unfiltered. So it's an IPA that we don't filter straight out of the tank.
So the beer nerds
Keller
would have
Haze.
known that the answer to that
probably.
question
So
right off
we
the
try not
bat.
to be super esoteric on the beer nerd thing. I mean, honestly, it's a lot easier to go straight at it with Siesta Beach Light.
Right. So what about Sun King? Where did that come from?
So Dave and I were looking for a name for our brewery. We kind of put everything together. It was coming together as a real thing. We'd talked names throughout that long wandering conversation as two guys who spent a decade each working in brew pubs. At a brew pub, you get 6 taps, generally speaking, and 5 of them are tied up with beers that you make year round, and there was 1, maybe 2 taps that you could make a new beer each month. And so it was always the new beers, beers like Siesta Beach Light or Orange Vanilla Cream Ale or Pachongo. Regular beers that are available all the time are what pay the bills in a brewery, because people like consistency and they want to know there's a thing they can go back to. But as a brewer, your heart is in the things that you get to make new and the fun stuff. You're like, oh, well, I tried this beer here and I want to do this and that. And so, that's where the inspiration comes from. So for us, we wanted our brewery to be about seasonality and about new beers all the time. to this date, we probably, as a brewery group, which we have the Florida brewery, we have 3 breweries in Indiana, so 3 of those tap rooms have breweries in them. We probably make 75 new beers every single year.
75 new beers a year.
Yeah, most of them are tap room only releases, and the tap room is kind of the proving ground. So we'll put stuff on tap here, and people will try it. And like, oh, if people react really well to it, then you're like, oh, well, maybe we should make that again, or maybe we want to make this tweak, and then eventually it might make its way into a package or become a year-round release. So our brick and mortar spaces are a lot about building a connection with our community and the people who love our products, so that when they go out to places like Captain Kurt's and see our beer, they're like, oh, I love Sun King, I want to have that beer. So it's about the connection, but it's also a proving ground for us. So we wanted to be seasonal. All the names we came up with were it had either been taken by breweries on the West Coast, back in 2008 when we were coming up with the idea. The next best thing we had was Solstice, which we decided was too esoteric, which is lost on anyone who doesn't know what a solstice is. But I mean, the only market research I ever did about Sun King was with people and names when we were thinking of names. And I would ask people, what do you think about solstice? And my dad literally looked at me, he goes, what the F is a solstice? And I'm like, it's the essence of the seasons. It's when they change, spring, summer, winter, fall. He's like, yeah, I don't get it. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So one day, Dave, who's a very dry smartass, came to me. I came into the brewery in the morning. I probably had a hangover. I'm 32 years old, and and he's
had been sampling.
Totally sampling a little too late,
right?
And it was a gray March morning in Indiana.
Oh, imagine that, right?
And so I come in, and he's all amped up, and I'm grumpy because I'm not a morning person, and I've come around a bit on that. And he goes, I've got it. And I said, what is it? He goes, it's the name of our brewery. And I was like, okay. And he goes, Sun King. And I literally looked at him and I go, that's a great name for a brewery if you're in Phoenix, Arizona, Denver, Colorado, California, Florida, somewhere where the sun shines all the time.
Right.
And Dave literally grabbed me by my hoodie and he dragged me to the front windows of the brewery. It was right on Illinois Street across from St. Elmo's in downtown. And he looks out, he's like, what is that, Clay? And I was like, what? And he goes, peeking out from behind the clouds. And I looked at him and I go, well, it's the sun, Dave. And he said, yes, Clay, the sun shines on us lowly Hoosiers like it does the great people of Colorado and California. And I actually looked at him and I go, you're an effing a-hole. And just walked away. And my sister lives in Denver, Colorado, and runs a public relations company. And I'd been bouncing things off of her in general, so I called her that day after work and I said, hey, Dave pitched me on a name. What do you think of Sun King? And she goes, I love it. And I said, yeah, but what about these things? And she goes, look, I know you just want to start a brewery that's in Indianapolis, Indiana, and sell beer to the people of Indiana. But if it's really successful, one day you might sell beer in Colorado or Arizona or Florida. And even if you tried to sell beer in Chicago, if you named it the Indianapolis Brewing Company, nobody in Chicago is going to want to drink your beer.
Smart sister. I like her.
She's like, if you name it Sun King, Sun, everyone loves the sun. It takes away point and place. People love the sun regardless. And if you name yourself King coming out the gate, you sound like you kick ass. And I was like, man, those are really good
right, because you don't want to name it the Cloudy King after Indianapolis. Yeah, that she was 100% correct.
And I was like, wow, Ro, thanks so much. And so then I went on to the internet and I Googled it, and no one had ever started a Sun King brewery. The web domains were open. I did a USPTO search. The trademarks were available. And at that point in time, I was like, buy domains.
Buy it, let's roll.
Let's go. This was pre-social media. So once social media kicked up, we were able to grab all of our domains for that stuff. But it just kind of fell together. And then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, we are Sun King.
So is that the original design that's on your shirt?
So the little guy, we call him Lance. He's the face out of the original design. So I left my job in the summer of 2008 with Dave and said Dave had 3 young daughters at the time and he needed to keep his job. I was frustrated and knew in order to get from our idea to actual execution that something needed to give, and I couldn't write a business plan working 40 hours a week. My wife was graduating with a master's degree in public health from the IU School of Medicine, and she wanted to go home to Alaska, where she was born and raised. I'd always wanted to go to Alaska, so I literally looked at her in a conversation and I said, how about I quit my job, we go to Alaska for the summer, come back, I'll write a business plan, we'll try to start a brewery, and if it doesn't work, then we'll figure out what our next step in life is. And she's like, you would do that? I'm like, I hate my job. I want to start my own business. Of course I would do that. So I left. we went to Alaska for 2.5 months, and she worked on fishing boats, and I helped her parents remodel their house. And we just got some space. I came back home to Indiana at the time, locked myself in the house, and wrote a business plan in my pajamas while drinking Miller High Life, because that's the only beer I could afford. Because I cashed in my second 401k to kind of cross the gap
Is it
to and have an
punishment?
investment.
Is that why you drink
I
that?
like High Life. It's the champagne of beers. I'm a very beer nostalgia person, so
I'm a very beer snob.
Okay,
I like
that's
the good, tasty stuff.
That's okay. Well, that's why you
And
love Sun King.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I love like a Yingling flavor.
Something a little bit more flavored. So
Yes.
I wrote the business plan, and I kind of got lost in where I was at. There's a lot going on there, but and I was like, okay, something has to give. So I wrote the business plan, and in the fall of 2008, we actually had one. I thought finding a building would be easy because there's lots of real estate available, right?
Right. You
Yeah.
would think.
So real estate's easy. Everyone should do it.
Right. Yeah.
But I thought finding a building would be easy and finding a money would take time. And we had a good friend who runs our investment group, who David known from the first brewery he'd worked at, who was an engineer, Rose-Hulman grad, Hoosier, had done well. His friends and family had done well. Dave and I talked to him a little bit about our idea, so I took a meeting. I pulled out of retirement at 70 to be the business mind behind my company because Dave and I knew a lot about beer, but not a lot about business. So my dad and I sat down with Andy to go over the business plan that I had written based on all of these thoughts and ideas. This is in October of 2008. And at the same time, Dave was not there because he was at the Great American Beer Festival, which is it's a competition every year where 3,000 breweries send in, they blind taste panel, almost 10,000 beers, and they award awards in about 100 different categories of different flavors of beer.
Oh.
And so Dave's at the Great American Beer Festival. He and I have 2 beers in the competition. I go to a meeting on Friday. We have a lunch meeting. We look over the business plan. Andy's wife, Anna, shows up. She looks over the business plan. They ask a bunch of tough questions. And at the end of lunch, we're wrapping it up, and we're like, okay, well, thanks for your time. I just wanted to kick the business plan by him and see what he thought, because he'd gotten a lot of business plans passed by him as a successful entrepreneur. And he goes, we're in. And I was like, okay, that's great. That's great. I love it. We'll talk more. And we just left, and I got in the car with my dad. I go, what does we're in mean? He goes, I don't know, but I think we just got funded. And I was like, okay. He's like, I didn't want to ask too many questions because that was a really good meeting. I'll call tomorrow and kind of follow up and see how far in we're in is. And the first thing the next morning, Dave calls me, and he's over the moon elated, and he's like, oh my God. I'm like, what? He goes, we just won gold and silver in the barrel-aged beer category for our 2 beers at the Great American Beer Festival.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh my God.
Stars
Yeah, I'm like,
align.
that is great. We didn't get to catch up yesterday, but we had a great meeting with Andy, and he's in. So I'm going to give this information to Omar. Omar's going to call Andy, tell him that we're world champions, and then see how far in is. So literally in a period of 48 hours, we funded the entire initial investment of our brewery, which was $500,000.
Wow. Isn't it crazy how the universe puts things together sometimes?
It does. I'm a big believer in that. Like I said,
I am too.
you put things out there, you bring positive energy to it, you set your intention, and you work towards those intentions. And if you have the right mindset and the right work ethic, I think you can accomplish just about anything.
I could not agree with you more
See,
on that.
We get along really well.
We do, yes. Next time we're adding beer to
Yeah,
this.
absolutely. We'll do the beer tasting podcast. It's going to be great.
Yes, that one might end a whole lot differently, but yeah, I am kind of a lightweight,
That's
but
fair.
I do love it. That's crazy, the way everything just,
Yeah.
boom, aligned, and now here you are.
So,
and
yeah.
now we're here in the sunshine.
Uh-huh.
All the people in Indiana watching this, you'll just have to come down and visit us.
It was kind of another part of the conversation about why Florida. And even when I talked to my bank, who is very supportive of me, and I love them because I owe them a lot of money, and they take good care of us on that front. But, they're like, why Florida? And we talked about all the demographics and the other things. And then kind of the capper on it is like, well, I'm 50, Dave's 59. Like, all of the people who are in our age range in the 50s over the next decade are going to be transitioning, because this area of the world, Southwest Florida, Sarasota specifically, it's where people from the Midwest, they retire. Our parents
Oh, yeah.
retire.
Half my family has ended up down here.
So the same people like yourself who fell in love with Sun King back in 2009 and 10 continue to transition. So over the course of the next decade, our original fan base
All right, we're
will
moving
transition
down here.
and
That's a
so
very good point.
on some levels. And then I so often, I don't go a week of my life without meeting someone from Indiana down here. Usually it's hardly a day.
That's the joke between me and Judy Berger. Is there's always an Indiana connection
Yeah.
with so many of the people that I show our houses to
Yeah.
and we sell to. We're kind of all over
It's
the
like
place.
6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You're like, okay, who do you know from Indiana? I don't know anybody from Indiana,
Right.
but I knew though this person.
Oh, if you and I sat here long enough, I'm sure we could connect many dots.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love Indiana. There's so many great things, but I love it here.
Oh, I do too. I'm proud of my roots. I'm grateful for what it taught me in life.
And you're a Martinsville boy.
Uh-huh,
My
yeah.
daughter
So-
lives there now,
Very-
and so many connections.
Very small world. I actually recently interviewed someone for a marketing job with my company, and they lived in Martinsville or Mooresville, which is right next door. But I said something to her. I was like, "Oh, that's where I went to high school." She's like, "Oh, my dad went to high school," and I was like, "Oh, when did he graduate?" And she told me, and it was 1 year after me. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
I know.
I'm interviewing you for a job, and your dad graduated a year after me. What a
We're
weird
getting
small
old.
world."
Yeah,
Absolutely.
those are the realizations.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, I've
Yeah.
got my daughter's 20, almost 28.
Okay.
Like, whew,
Yeah.
how is that possible?
I don't know.
Yeah,
It goes fast from everything they tell me. So.
it does. But you've got little littles.
I do. I have a 7.5-year-old daughter, Zaya. She's fantastic and sweet, and she actually just goes to the Mangrove School of Sarasota, just over the
Great
bridge, which
school.
is an outdoor Waldorf school, so it's experiential education. She's outside every day. They go to a different state park every Friday and do Forest Friday. She
Wow.
learns about nature and the world around her, and she's having a fantastic education. And then her extracurricular activity, she goes to the Circus Arts Conservatory, and she's in the circus program, so she just
Yeah.
performed last fall in that.
Oh,
so,
wow.
So, I mean, she loves it here. My son Levin's 2.5, and my wife Staria is pregnant with our third child, who is due in August.
Oh,
So,
congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love raising kids here. I mean, my son is 14, and we have enjoyed so much of it. It's just the personality and the people that come down here.
Yep.
And I love we have schools like that. We're in the public school system. Gabe loves it. We've had a great experience.
There's great public schools. My wife's mother's Dutch and was a Waldorf teacher, so when we found this school down here, it fit
yeah.
with the way that she was raised, and I literally was like, that's school, but just experiencing it, and the teachers and the faculty, the other students, the parents. One of the things I love about being in Sarasota, it's such an international community.
Right.
I know so many people from other parts of the world that live here.
And very like-minded people. That's what I have found is it's a lot of people that think the same way that we do that ended up, because hardly anybody, gets transferred here. We've all chosen to come to Siesta Key, Sarasota, and it's a totally different mindset.
Yeah, I never really thought of that, but yeah, there's not like a huge industry like when I was in
No.
Indianapolis. People get transferred into Lilly and Rolls Royce,
The
and
NCAA, there's a million
all of
different
these
things
companies,
there.
but
Yeah, no,
down
here it's a
yeah,
choice.
You
It's-
choose to be here, which definitely changes the way your mind works and things about it. So yeah,
Yeah, that's what I found, and that's but it's brought like-minded people, and it's one of the things I enjoy about it.
it's fantastic. I mean, it's one of those turns for the best in my life. People all the time when I'm back in Indiana, they're like, "How do you like Florida?" I'm like, "I love it," and they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "That's fantastic." I mean, my kids love it. I love it.
Oh,
It's given me an opportunity to raise and be with my family in a way that's so different from Indiana. I usually make them jealous because I'm like, "Well, my daughter's done with school by 3 on Friday, and we're right by Siesta Key, so we pick my daughter up at 3 on Friday. I knock off work early, and we go to the beach for a few hours before
Yep.
we stop somewhere, grab burgers, and head home
It's
and
the life, isn't
rinse,
it?
rinse the sand off and put them to bed tired and sun
And it's
worn. Oh,
perfect.
it's wonderful.
Yeah, it
really
is
is.
paradise for a lot of different reasons. And when we moved here, I said I want to be able to ride my bike to the beach, and I do that all the time.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's such a great life. And my son he never lived in Indiana. He was born in Georgia,
Okay.
so he does. But we go back all the time. So I want him to get those Indiana roots.
Sure.
He's in his dad's family, farming family, Gutweins,
Yep.
and then my side, we're a Greencastle area. I want him to have that, but we come right back here.
Absolutely. For all good reasons.
You're right. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's been really fun
We are going to have
talking
to
to
do
you.
this again. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. We're going to go taste some beer now. people can find you here in Sarasota.
Yep, so we've got our Sarasota tap room is at 12th and Mango, so it is just east of 301, a few blocks from Ed Smith Stadium. You can find our beers available here at Captain Kurt's, as well as all over Siesta Key. Siesta Beach Light has been kind of taking the area by storm. If you're a classic beer drinker, I recommend it. It's a really great beer for just anyone. If your dad or your wife or your cousin or your uncle doesn't think they like craft beer, they can have a Siesta Beach Light because it's a really
phenomenal.
delicious
It is
beer.
a really good, smooth beer.
Yep. And then our beers are available in Publix and in various package stores and all over Sarasota, Manatee
Right. It's at
County.
Gilligan's, I know that. Morton's Market, yeah,
MVP.
it's all over the place.
So yeah, it's all over the place. There's actually too many to name. So I mean, I'm grateful the people of Sarasota, the beer drinkers and just the public, but also the bar owners, restaurateurs, business owners have welcomed us in. And I mean, I regularly do market visits, and when I'm out meeting people, if they know about us, they'll often say, "Oh, did you come in from Indiana?" And I'm like, "No, I actually live in Gulfgate." And they're like, "Oh my God, you're local." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm absolutely local. I'm raising kids here." And they're like, "Oh," and it honestly, it goes a long way, and it matters to them that the business that they're doing.
Oh,
business.
right.
That's another thing I love about this area is there's a huge support for local business.
Yes,
which is
very,
really great.
very much so.
And I think when I moved here too, people are like, "Isn't that where people retire?" I'm like, "No, there are so many young families and young entrepreneurs and people doing great things in Sarasota. Like you go ahead and just think the things that you want to think about it and leave it to us."
I get
'cause
asked
we've
that a
got
lot
it.
when I'm showing houses. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no,
Not
this
at all.
place is
I
a
mean, we've got
very,
great
very
schools
vibrant
and a ton of
community.
families. So, yep.
Well, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
I look forward to the next time.
Okay, sounds good. Bye, everyone.
The final segment is brought to you by the law offices of Eric Fleming, specializing in real estate closings. Mr. Fleming is also the current president of the Siesta Key Chamber of Commerce. And by Gilligan's Island Bar and Grill. Experience the heartbeat of the Siesta Village's dining and social scene.
I really want to thank Clay for coming on the podcast. I was so excited when I saw the Siesta Beach Light. I absolutely had to get him on. And then as we started talking, there were so many connections. We know so many of the same people. I love Sarasota. I am so proud of my Indiana roots, but I really love my Siesta Key, as you all know. And they are such a great steward of all of that. And we're going to be working together. He's going to help us out on the Alliance. We've got a lot going on with that, so stay tuned. Don't forget to check out Sun King Brewery, kind of just north of downtown. So look them up, Sun King Brewery. And don't forget about us, Siesta Sand Live. We're on Apple, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're everywhere you want to be. We've also got all of our great sponsors. Don't forget to check them out. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at Siesta Key Natalie on Instagram or natalie.gutwein at premiersir.com. So stay sunny, Siesta.
Siesta Sand Live is broadcast from Captain Kurt's Village. It's Siesta Key's home to great food, great drinks, great music, and great times. Look for the giant American flag.